We know what a tree is because we have in our mind its qualities. The leaves, the branches, the trunk, the bark, these aspects make up what we can identify as a tree. Yet when it comes to ourselves as men, we don't have the same kind of strong conceptual identification. It's all a bunch of vague attributes like big muscles or is vulgar. It isn't a clear concept for us. We're raised without a clear identity for ourselves, and that's leaving us feeling distant to our own existence. We're not sure how to behave or how to navigate the world because we're not sure how we even fit into it. What's missing is a clear identity of what a man is and why. Where does the idea of sexuality even come from? People talk a lot about masculinity and femininity all the time, but what are they actually referring to? Today, the concept of masculinity has been disconnected from any kind of real-world thing. On one hand, we have our sex, or a man, which is tied in with our body's nature. But on the other hand, we have our gender, which is masculinity. But our gender isn't tied in with anything. It's apparently just whatever we feel like, which is to say, not tied to anything real. This is why the idea of a man is so floating and meaningless. So in order to understand it, we need to ground it in the facts of reality again. So like the tree, the concept first began with the real-world thing. The whole reason we even have the idea of what a tree is because there's a real thing out there that we're referring to. So when it comes to masculinity, we need to ground it again. We need to ground it into something real to refer to. Otherwise, the concept is floating and meaningless. Our sexuality comes from our sex. Men and women are built differently, and it's these differences that have brought about the concepts of masculine and feminine, male, female, man and woman. To be masculine or feminine simply means to embody your respective sex. But there's a lot to unpack there, and that's what this video is going to be about. So what are you embodying exactly? Well, let's dive deeper into what exactly it means to be a man. So let's first start with the real-world facts. What are men as distinct from women? Well, we can see that we're taller, we have broader shoulders, we have faster muscle growth. We're built to get out into the world and get things done. Men's bodies are built for productivity, and you can really see this reflected in our psychologies. Our psychology, human psychology generally speaking, has a lot to do with how we're built physically as well as our environments. And so being that our bodies are built a certain way, that's going to affect how we approach and how we navigate the world around us, which is going to incredibly affect the development of our psychologies. And this is absolutely why men and women have different psychologies and very distinct psychologies. It's because we are built differently. And when it comes to men's psychologies, you can really see how the nature of our bodies really affects our psychology. You know, we're interested in tools. When a man's working on a project, soon enough, all the guys around the neighborhood or around the office or whatever are interested in what he's doing. The first thing that comes to a man's mind when he sees a problem is, how can this be fixed? The nature of our bodies and our psychology go together. So I would say the essence of what it means to be a man is efficaciousness, because our bodies are built to get things done, and you can see that really reflected in a man's psychology, as he is focused on productivity, on doing things. A man is built to make life possible, and that reflects in his psychology. This isn't to say that women can't do any of these things, or they shouldn't be productive or efficacious. That comes from a misunderstanding of what sexuality is. Sexuality is not about following rules or obeying some kind of duty. It's about understanding your nature and living in accordance with it. It's about a propensity for one thing or another. Men are built to be productive, and their psychology is, gear them toward that. That's a sort of a propensity to be a certain way. And I think psychological health comes from being in tune with your own nature, with what you're built to be. In the same way that your body has a certain nature, you have to live by that nature in order to have a healthy body. You have to have certain nutrients. You have to have a certain amount of exercise. The exact same way goes for your mind. Your psychology requires a certain way of functioning in order to function well. And that nature is based on your physical identity. So today, when it comes to sexuality, we almost think of men and women as being two different species. We have our own truths and our own agendas, and we're constantly battling each other for dominance. But in truth, men and women are actually built to go together. If you think of two puzzle pieces, it's actually the very thing that makes them different that allows them to go together. We are built to be in harmony with each other. There are a lot of people out there today trying to remove the differences between men and women, trying to make men less masculine and make women less feminine. But once you remove those differences between men and women, like those puzzle pieces, once you remove the differences, we're just two formless blobs next to each other with no relation to each other. It's our differences that create the harmony. One of the biggest reasons why there are so many issues surrounding men and women today is because of the way we're taught to think about sexuality. There are really only two ways, and firstly, that is the modern view. The modern view is an open attack on our sexual identity and our mental association with that identity. We can see this with the creation of the terms sex and gender. They're treated as two separate things which have no relation to each other. It's an open rebellion against our sexual nature, and it's leaving us unsure of who we are and what we are. And secondly, the only real alternative that actually exists out there is the old way, the traditional way, which can really be thought of as a dogma or a set of rules to obey. They see your sex as a duty. If you're a man, then you go to the office and work and come home to a meal made by your wife, who then does the dishes while she raises the kids. So we're caught between these two false alternatives. You can either recognize that men and women are different while having to live by certain set rules whether you like it or not, or you can spend the rest of your life fleeing from your identity as a man or woman and fly into defensive rages anytime anyone recognizes the fact. And in the end, both are basically the same. Neither is actually seeing what it means to be a man or woman. One is trying to obliterate the fact, while the other is just living by some rules they made up. Both options lead to an unhappy and dysfunctional life. These two alternatives leave you disconnected with what it actually means to be a man or woman. So the only real alternative is to be connected with your nature. So what does it mean to see yourself as natural? Well, to start with, when you start to see that your nature isn't a question but a fact to be accepted, your insecurities about the topic disappear. There's so much vagueness around this topic of what it means to be a man or woman that our own identity of who we are is just a big question to us. Most of us feel like it's a thing we just sort of make up. The fact that it's so groundless, that it's not really a real thing that we feel inside of ourselves, that we are connected to in reality, that it's a thing we just sort of make up. The fact that it's so vague to us is why we're so insecure about it. And the fact that we're so insecure about it means that we end up doing ridiculous things like buying big muscle cars to make ourselves feel more macho, or, working out to ridiculous levels and hitting on women excessively just to feel more like a man, or, bullying other men to feel more macho. But all of that comes from insecurity, not this idea of toxic masculinity, not this idea that, men are inherently, insecure and unstable, but it comes from the insecurity from not knowing how to behave. So that insecurity boils out of us. It has nothing to do with other people or the opinions of others, but rather the opinion of ourselves, the opinion of what we are and how to behave. It all comes from the insecurity from not knowing what we are. The problem is not knowing what it means to be a man. And in our culture, people are fighting hard not to teach people, men and women, of what it means to be a man or woman. So the best thing that you can do for yourself is start to create that kind of grounded idea in yourself, for yourself, to get a strong idea of what it means to be a man. I've got a few tips for you on how you can get started doing that. Firstly, as men in our culture, we are taught not to take up too much space, that our presence is threatening to women, to try and minimize and apologize for our existence. As a result, we tend to minimize our existence, to minimize our actual physical presence. We stand with our Our bodies kind of hunched over, our shoulders caved in, our legs close together. We try to be small. We try to close in on ourselves. So the best thing that you can start to do is something as simple as correcting your posture. Posture can play a huge part in how you feel about yourself. When you're hunched over and you're closed off, you'll feel closed off. But when you roll those shoulders back, stand up straight, hold your head up, open your legs up, stand in a natural, comfortable way, you're going to start to feel more comfortable, more natural. You'll start to feel like you belong. The fact that people find, a man or woman being proud of their own sexual identity has nothing to do with you. That comes from a projection of their own insecurity directed at you. They don't like seeing you being comfortable with your own sexual identity. They don't like seeing a proud man comfortable with the fact that he's a man. They don't like that because they aren't comfortable with their own identity. They're projecting their own insecurities on you, so do not take it personally. So throughout the day, try checking your posture. Embody the posture of pride as a reminder to yourself that you do not have to apologize for your existence as a man. Something as simple as your posture can really help to garner a sense of pride in your own body, as well as a sense of comfortability in your own skin. So here's tip number 2. Something else that has seriously destroyed our ability to feel comfortable in our own skin is the complete lack of role models for men. Without seeing what it means to be a man, we have no idea what we should be working towards in our life. Tragically, a lot of us have really terrible, terrible role models for what it means to be a man. And this all comes from the appalling view of men in our culture. One of the best things that you can do is cut out all the modern media that's giving you this message and start filling your life with older works. Seeing men who are certain, confident, and efficacious will help get you that image in your mind and make it more clear to you. Another bit of advice is something a lot more vulnerable, but effective. Whenever you find yourself naked, like when you get out of the shower or something, just spend a moment looking at yourself. This can be really uncomfortable for us, but it's actually that uncomfortability that you're trying to overcome. It's going to be weird. You're going to think, why am I listening to some guy on the internet tell me to look at myself naked? This is so weird. Why am I doing this? But the thing is, the whole reason to do this is because the uncomfortability that we feel is actually something that keeps us from being comfortable really getting to know ourselves, not just physically, but generally. The key here is to learn to really see yourself without any defenses, without anything in the way, purely yourself. Because most of the time we spend alive is spent hiding who we really are, hiding our thoughts and our emotions from others and from ourselves, hiding our bodies behind clothing. We don't really spend the time to become comfortable with who we really are. So spend just a minute to see yourself without any walls up, without any defenses. And when you look at yourself, don't just see flesh. See your emotions and your thoughts. See everything that makes you who you are. Because your body isn't just a shell made of meat and bone. It's quite literally you. The key to understanding and becoming comfortable with your own masculinity, with becoming harmonious with it, all starts with seeing yourself as natural. And normalizing your body with yourself is the perfect way to start. It's a deeply sensitive topic, but my goal here is to try to understand who and what we are in order to create a happy life. We are going to be talking a lot about this topic in the future, so be sure you subscribe to hear more. Like the video if you liked it, and if you have any questions or comments, definitely leave a comment. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you very much for watching.